See you tonight.
The day we stopped saying, I love you, wasn't dramatic. There was no fight, no slammed doors, no tears, no accusations. We just forgot. At least that's what I told myself. It started small. One morning he left for work and said, see you tonight. Not love you, not even bye, babe, just see you tonight. I remember standing in the kitchen holding my coffee, waiting for the rest of the sentence. It never came. And for some reason, I didn't say it either. That was the first day. I didn't know it would become the last. We weren't a dramatic couple, 6 years together, 2 years married, no kids yet. A house we could barely afford but were proud of. We used to say, I love you for everything. Before work, after work, before sleep, during random grocery store moments, sometimes for no reason at all. It was punctuation in our relationship, a verbal seatbelt, until one day, it disappeared. At first, I thought he was stressed. He started staying late at work. His phone turned face down more often. He laughed less at my jokes. But he wasn't cold. That's what made it confusing. He still fixed things around the house, still asked about my day, still slept next to me. He just felt farther away, and neither of us said it anymore. Not I love you, not once. Weeks passed, and the silence grew heavy. You don't realize how powerful those 3 words are until they're gone. Without them, everything feels temporary. Conversations feel fragile. Good moments feel rented. You start wondering, is this the beginning of the end? Or am I just insecure? One night I tested him. As he rolled over to sleep, I whispered, love you. Soft, barely audible. He froze, just for a second. Then he said, good night, good night. That was the moment I knew something was wrong somewhere. He wasn't forgetting. He was just avoiding it. 3 weeks later, I found the folder. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't locked. It was in his desk drawer, and it had my name on it. At first, I almost closed it. It felt invasive, like reading someone else's mail, but it was my name. So I opened it. Inside were medical documents, my medical documents, test results, brain scans, neurology referrals. But I had never seen them before. I don't have migraines. I don't have seizures. I've never fainted. The diagnosis line read, early onset degenerative neurological disorder. My heart stopped because I had never been diagnosed with anything. For a moment, I actually questioned myself. Had I gone to an appointment and forgotten? Had I dismissed something serious as just stress? Was I losing time without realizing it? I checked the dates. 6 months ago, I opened my phone, scrolled through my calendar. Nothing. No hospital visits. No specialist consultations. But the paperwork looked real. Insurance approvals, doctor signatures, medical ID numbers. My hands started shaking. I walked into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. Do I look different? I tried to remember the last time I had a headache. I suddenly felt hyper aware of everything. My breathing, my balance, my memory. Was I slower lately? Was that why he'd been distant? Not because he was cheating, but because he was preparing. That thought hit me hard. What if he knew something about me that I didn't know yet? That night, I watched him carefully. He laughed at something on TV. He looked normal. He asked if I wanted tea. Everything was normal. But when I mentioned I felt a little tired lately, his eyes flickered, just for a second. Concern or guilt. I couldn't tell. I didn't confront him that night or the next. Instead, I called the neurology clinic listed on the papers, my voice barely steady. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm an appointment history under my name." The receptionist paused. "Yes, I see multiple consult notes here." My stomach dropped, but I've never been there. Silence on the other end. Then, "Ma'am, the intake forms were completed and signed." Signed? By me? But I had never signed anything. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Can you confirm the signature?" I asked quietly. There was a pause. "It matches the ID uploaded on file." Uploaded ID? My chest went cold. I hung up slowly. For a long moment, I just stood there in the kitchen, staring at nothing. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a forgotten appointment. Someone had built a medical history under my name, and there was only one person in this house who had access to my ID. That night, I didn't say anything. I watched him. He moved around the kitchen like always, asked if I wanted dinner, kissed my temple in passing. Everything looks normal. Very normal. I went to bed before him and pretended to be asleep when he came in. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, when he left for work, I took the folder from his drawer. This time, I didn't just skim it. I read every page, every test, every date, every forged signature. Then I placed it neatly on the dining table, and I waited. When he walked in that evening, he saw it immediately. He then pulled a chair and sat down, then lifted his eyes to me. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look confused. He just looked tired. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he said. "Yet?" My pulse thudded in my ears. "What is this?" I asked. He swallowed. "You went to the doctor 6 months ago for headaches. They ran tests." "I never went to a neurologist." "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't." He showed me emails, appointment confirmations, insurance approvals, all under my name, all real. Except I had never attended those appointments. Someone had, but it wasn't me. He sat down slowly, like his body had been holding something heavy for months, and it had finally dropped. "I'm the one who's sick." "The diagnosis was mine," he said. Then he continued. "I thought if I made you think you were getting sick slowly, it would be easier." "Easier?" My voice barely sounded like mine. He dragged a hand over his face. "For when I start forgetting you." The words landed between us like something fragile and final. I didn't breathe. "What are you talking about?" His eyes were red now. "They told me it was aggressive," he said quietly. "They said memory loss would come fast. Within a year, confusion, personality changes. Eventually, I wouldn't recognize you." My stomach twisted. "So you decided to erase me first?" I whispered. He shook his head quickly. "No, I was trying to make you strong. I thought if you believed you were slipping away, if you thought something was wrong with you, you wouldn't be so focused on what was happening to me." I stared at him. "You thought watching myself fall apart would hurt less. I thought hating me would hurt less than watching me disappear," he said, his voice breaking. Silence swallowed the room. "I didn't want the last 'I love you,'" I remember saying, "to be the last one ever," he continued. "I didn't want to wake up one day and not know who you were. So I started pulling away. I thought if I created distance now, it wouldn't destroy you later. It felt like the air had been pulled from my lungs. You didn't trust me to handle it," I said. "I didn't trust myself to survive watching you watch me fade," he admitted. That was the part that hurt. Not the diagnosis, not the forged records, the fact that he'd decided alone. He tried to protect me from grief by giving me silence instead. And silence is a different kind of loss. 2 months later, as I sat beside him in another hospital appointment, the doctor said something strange. "We've reviewed the scans again." He looked confused. "There's been a mistake. The aggressive progression? Misread. The tumor was benign, operable, contained. He wasn't deteriorating. He wasn't losing his memory. He wasn't dying. He was going to live. I expected him to collapse into me. I expected tears, laughter, a thank God, something dramatic. Instead, he just nodded, like someone who had already said goodbye in his head and didn't know how to unsay it. The surgery was scheduled 2 weeks later. Friends sent flowers. His mother cried with relief. We smiled for everyone. At home, though, something felt off. That first night after the appointment, I cooked his favorite meal, a small celebration. We sat across from each other. "You're going to be okay," I said softly. "Yeah," he replied. "Yeah, not I know, not I'm so grateful, not I love you, just, yeah." A few days later, I reached for his hand while we were walking into the pharmacy. He hesitated, just a second, but I felt it, as if his body had already learned how to walk alone. The night before surgery, I waited. Surely this would be the moment. Surely fear would break him open. "I was so scared of losing you," I whispered in the dark. He stared at the ceiling. "I know." That was it. No reaching for me, no pulling me close. Months ago, we would have clung to each other. Now we lay side by side like polite strangers sharing a bed. After the surgery, recovery went smoothly. The doctors were optimistic. Life resumed. But something else didn't. He still worked late, still forgot to text, still spoke to me gently, kindly, but not intimately. One evening I said it on purpose. "I love you." I let it sit there between us. He paused before answering. "Love you too." Too. Not "I love you." Not the way he used to say it, like it was oxygen. It sounded responsive, obligatory, practiced. That was the moment I understood. The distance he created out of fear had solidified into pattern. The silence wasn't protection anymore. It was muscle memory. We had trained ourselves for goodbye. And the body doesn't unlearn that overnight. We had spent months rehearsing loss, detaching, withholding, softening the blow before it landed. And somewhere in all that preparation for grief, we stopped reaching, stopped choosing, stopped saying the words first. He wasn't afraid anymore. But he had already learned how to live without leaning on me. And I had already learned how to survive without expecting him to. And that's the quiet tragedy no one warns you about. Sometimes the diagnosis is wrong, but the damage is real. And one night, sitting across from him at the kitchen table, I finally said it. "This isn't about the tumor anymore." He looked up slowly. "It's about us." There was silence. Then I continued. "You pulled away when you thought you were dying," I said, "and I understood that." He nodded faintly. "But you never came back." That hit him. I saw it. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled against the table. "I don't know how," he admitted. And that was the first honest thing he'd said in months. We didn't fix it that night. There was no dramatic kiss, no swelling music moment. Instead, he moved his chair closer, just a few inches. It felt like crossing an ocean. "I got used to protecting you from me," he said quietly. "I don't know how to stop doing that." "You start by not deciding things alone," I replied. He swallowed. I was terrified. "I know," I said, "but you don't get to erase me to make dying easier." The word dying hung there. We had both tasted it. It had changed us. The next morning, something small shifted. He reached for my hand first, not out of habit, out of intention. It felt awkward, almost formal, but deliberate, and something done deliberately is powerful. We started building our relationship intentionally after that. Every night before bed, we had to say one thing, not "I love you." That felt too automatic now. We had to say something specific. One memory, one gratitude, one fear. The first night he said, "I miss the way we used to laugh in grocery stores." The second night I said, "I was angrier than I admitted." The third night he said, "I thought pushing you away would make me brave." We weren't romantic. We were rebuilding. The real fight came 2 weeks later. He snapped at me over something small, a bill, I think. And I felt it. That old detachment, that protective wall sliding back into place. "Don't," I said sharply. His head jerked up. "Don't go cold when you're uncomfortable. That's what you did before." He stared at me, and for a split second I thought this was it, the breaking point. But instead, he exhaled slowly. "You're right." 3 words, 3 impossible words. Before the diagnosis scare, he would have defended himself. Before the diagnosis scare, I would have retreated. But we were different now, cracked open and aware. One night, months later, I asked him something I hadn't dared to ask. "When they told you it was aggressive, what scared you the most?" He didn't hesitate this time. "Not remembering your face," he said, "and you remembering mine." That broke me, because I had been so focused on what he did wrong, I forgot how scared he must have been. We weren't enemies. We were 2 people reacting badly to terror. The first time he said, "I love you" again without prompting, it wasn't dramatic. We were brushing our teeth. He looked at me in the mirror and said it casually, but it wasn't responsive. It wasn't automatic. It was chosen. "I love you." And I believed it, because it wasn't said out of fear of losing me. It was said despite knowing he almost did. We didn't go back to who we were. That couple died in the hospital waiting room. But we built something sturdier, less naive, more intentional. Love, after you've rehearsed goodbye, is quieter, but it's real. And maybe love doesn't survive because it's loud. Maybe it survives because when it gets quiet, we choose to speak again. If you were in this relationship, would you fight for it? Or would you walk away when the silence started? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know what you would have done. And if you love stories that explore the things we don't say out loud, subscribe. Because here, we tell the stories people are often too afraid to admit they're living. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next one.